There is a specific kind of silence that only happens after 3 a.m. It is heavy, thick, and it makes your ears ring. If you have ever worked a night shift in the middle of nowhere, you know exactly what I am talking about. You start to hear things. The hum of the drink coolers sounds like breathing. The ice machine dropping cubes sounds like footsteps. You tell yourself it is just your mind playing tricks on you. But sometimes it isn't a trick. It was exactly 3:15 a.m. when the dark blue sedan pulled into the parking lot. It rolled in slowly, its headlights cutting through the thick fog that always rolled off the highway at night. The car didn't park in front of the store doors. It pulled all the way up to pump number 4, the one furthest away from the building, right at the edge of the woods. I stood behind the counter, holding a wiping cloth, waiting for the driver to get out. The digital chime of the gas pump didn't ring. The driver didn't swipe a credit card. They didn't even open their door. They just sat there. The engine was turned off, and the headlights went dark. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. I just stared at the dark outline of the car. The parking lot lights were old and dim, so I couldn't see through the tinted windshield. I grabbed the store phone to call the non-emergency police line, just to ask them to do a drive-by. I picked up the receiver and held it to my ear. There was no dial tone. The line was completely dead. My heart did a slow, painful flip in my chest. I looked back out the window. The driver's side door of the sedan was now wide open, but there was no one standing by the car. Whoever was inside was already out, and they were somewhere in the dark. I should have locked the doors right then. I should have run, but I didn't, and that decision almost cost me my life.
My name is David. I am 23 years old, and at the time, I was just trying to pay my way through community college. My town isn't very big, and jobs are hard to find, so when the local Gas and Go on Highway 87 offered me $2 above minimum wage to work the graveyard shift, I took it without thinking twice. Highway 87 is a long, empty stretch of road surrounded by dense pine forests. The closest town is 40 miles in one direction, and the closest hospital is 50 miles in the other. When you are out there, you are completely on your own. During the day, it is a busy spot for truck drivers and people on road trips, but at night, it becomes a ghost town. Sometimes I would go 4 or 5 hours without seeing a single car pass by. The gas station itself was a standard rectangular brick building. Inside, the fluorescent lights were blindingly bright. It made you feel like you were standing inside a fishbowl. If you stood in the middle of the store and looked out the glass doors, you couldn't see the parking lot. You could only see your own reflection and the pitch-black darkness pressing against the glass. The store manager, a grumpy guy named Rick, had a strict set of rules for the night shift. Rule number 1, never leave the cash register empty. Rule number 2, clean the hot dog rollers every night. Rule number 3, lock the main glass doors at exactly 2 a.m. After 2 a.m., all customers had to be served through the small bulletproof night window next to the doors. I liked the night window. It made me feel safe. There was 2 inches of thick glass between me and whatever weirdos decided to buy cigarettes in the middle of the night. But that night, my 5th month on the job, something felt off from the moment I clocked in. The air was too still. The woods outside seemed closer to the building than usual. Rick had left the store at 10 p.m., tossing me the keys and telling me not to mess up the inventory count. I spent the first few hours doing my normal routine. I mopped the floor, restocked the coolers, and wiped down the counters. By 2 a.m., I locked the front doors, just like I was supposed to. I went back behind the counter, sat on my tall stool, and started reading a textbook. I was completely isolated. The silence of the empty highway was deafening. If you have never been truly alone,
You don't realize how loud your own thoughts can be. You start looking at the dark corners of the store. You wonder what is hiding behind the chips aisle. You wonder if someone is standing just outside the glass, watching you in the bright light, while they hide in the dark. That was why my stomach dropped when that blue sedan pulled up to pump number 4 at 3:15 a.m. When the phone line went dead, I knew this wasn't just a random traveler needing a break. The phone lines ran on cables behind the building. They didn't just stop working. Someone had to cut them. I put the dead phone down on the counter. My hands were shaking. I looked at the front doors. They were locked. I looked at the night window. It was locked shut. I was safe inside the fishbowl. At least, I thought I was. I backed away from the counter and moved toward the center of the store, trying to get a better angle to see the parking lot. The blue sedan was completely still. The open driver's door looked like a black mouth. I grabbed the microphone for the outside intercom system. I pressed the button, my thumb slipping because it was sweating so much. "Hey," I said, my voice echoing loudly across the empty parking lot. "The store is closed. You can pay at the pump with a card." No answer, just the static of the speakers. I waited another 5 minutes. Every second felt like an hour. I kept my eyes locked on the edge of the woods behind the car. The darkness out there was absolute. You couldn't see a foot past the tree line. Then, motion caught my eye. But it didn't come from the car. It came from the woods on the opposite side of the parking lot. A person stepped out of the trees. It was a woman. She was barefoot, and she was wearing a light-colored dress that was torn at the bottom. She looked terrified. She didn't walk normally. She stumbled forward, looking over her shoulder into the dark trees, as if something was chasing her. She saw the bright lights of the gas station and started running toward the front doors. She slammed her hands against the thick glass, leaving bloody handprints on the clean surface. "Help me!" she screamed. Her voice was muffled through the glass, but I could hear the raw panic in it. "Please, open the door! He's coming!" I rushed to the door, my keys in my hand. My brain was screaming at me to help her, but as I reached for the lock, I remembered the blue sedan at pump 4, the open door, the cut phone lines. "I can't open the door!" I yelled through the glass. "Go to the night window. I can call—" Wait, the phones are dead. The woman pressed her face against the glass, crying uncontrollably. "He's going to kill me. You have to let me in, please." I looked past her, scanning the dark parking lot. "Who is going to kill you? Where is he?" The woman suddenly stopped crying. Her expression changed in a single second. The pure terror on her face vanished, replaced by a cold, completely blank stare. She took a step back from the glass. She didn't look at me anymore. She looked directly at the security camera mounted above the door. "He is already inside," she whispered. Then, she turned around and sprinted back into the dark woods. She didn't stumble this time. She ran fast, disappearing into the black trees. I stood there, frozen. What did she mean? He is already inside? The front doors were locked. I had been sitting at the counter all night. Nobody could have gotten inside. Before I could even process what was happening, all the bright fluorescent lights in the store shut off at the exact same time. The sudden darkness was blinding. The low hum of the coolers died. The music playing on the overhead speakers stopped. The only light came from the dim red glow of the emergency exit signs and the faint yellow light from the parking lot. I grabbed the heavy metal flashlight from under the counter. I clicked it on, sweeping the beam of light across the aisles. "Hello?" I called out. My voice trembled. Through the front glass doors, I saw movement. A man stepped out from behind the blue sedan at pump 4. He wasn't running. He was walking very slowly, casually toward the store. In one hand, he dragged a long, heavy metal tire iron along the concrete. But the most terrifying thing was his face.
He was wearing a cheap plastic mask. It was a blank, smiling face, the kind you buy at a dollar store for Halloween. The smile was wide and painted bright red. He walked right up to the glass front doors. He stood exactly where the woman had been standing minutes ago. He placed his free hand on the glass, right over her bloody handprint. He tilted his head, looking at me through the dark glass. Then he reached down and grabbed the door handle. He pulled it. The lock held firm. He didn't look angry. He just slowly turned his head toward the side of the building. He started walking around the corner, out of my sight. He was checking the doors. A cold shock of pure horror hit my brain. The front doors were locked, but at 1 a.m. I had taken the trash out to the dumpster. The dumpster was behind the building, accessed through the back stockroom door. I couldn't remember if I had locked the back door. If I hadn't, the man with the smiling mask was about to walk right in, and I was completely trapped with him. I didn't walk, I sprinted. I ran down the chips aisle, my shoes squeaking loudly on the tile floor. The back stockroom was at the rear of the store, behind two heavy wooden swinging doors. I pushed through them and entered the stockroom. It was pitch black in here. The stockroom didn't have windows. It was just a long, narrow hallway filled with towering metal shelves stacked with boxes of motor oil, soda syrups, and toilet paper. At the very end of the hallway was the heavy metal door that led outside to the dumpster. I shined my flashlight down the narrow aisle. The heavy metal back door was wide open. The cold night air was blowing inside, bringing the smell of pine trees and gasoline into the room. I ran toward the door to slam it shut and lock it. I was halfway down the aisle when I heard the heavy metal door squeak on its hinges. Click. The door closed. I stopped dead in my tracks. I turned my flashlight off instantly, plunging myself into total, suffocating darkness. I was too late. He was inside, and he had shut the door behind him. I held my breath. I crouched down low, pressing my back against a stack of cardboard boxes. The silence in the stockroom was heavy. I strained my ears, listening for any sound. Step. A heavy boot scuffed against the concrete floor. It was close, maybe 20 feet away, at the other end of the stockroom aisle. I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket. I knew the store lines were cut, but maybe my cell had a signal. I looked at the glowing screen. No service. The thick brick walls and metal roof of the back room blocked everything. I was completely cut off from the world. He was moving slowly. He was hunting me. I needed a weapon. I couldn't fight a man with a heavy tire iron using my bare hands. I slowly reached out in the dark, feeling the shelf next to me. My fingers brushed against small cardboard boxes. I carefully slid my hand inside one of them. My fingers felt a smooth plastic handle and a sharp metal edge. A box cutter. We use them to open inventory deliveries. I grabbed it, sliding the razor-sharp blade out with my thumb. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. I heard the sound of a zipper opening in the dark. Then, the sloshing sound of liquid in a plastic container. The strong, overwhelming smell of raw gasoline filled the small stockroom. It burned my nose and watered my eyes. What was he doing? Why was he pouring gas in the back room? I had to see where he was. I dropped down to my hands and knees. I crawled slowly, silently, under the bottom shelf of the storage racks. The gap was just wide enough for me to fit my head and shoulders. I looked down the aisle. The emergency lights from the main store cast a faint red glow through the swinging doors at the end of the room. Against that red light, I saw his silhouette. He was a tall man, wearing a heavy dark jacket. The plastic smiling mask caught the red light, making it look like a demon's face. He was holding a large red gas can, pouring it over the cardboard boxes of inventory. He didn't want to rob the store. He wanted to burn it down. I had to get out of the stockroom.
If he lit a match right now, I would be roasted alive in this narrow hallway. I waited until his back was turned. I slid out from under the shelf, keeping my body as low as possible. I crawled toward the swinging doors that led back to the main store. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. I reached the swinging doors. I gently pushed one open, just an inch, and slipped through into the main store. I was out of the stockroom, but I was still trapped in the building. The front doors were locked with a deadbolt, and I needed my keys to open them from the inside. My keys were sitting on the front counter, completely out in the open. I couldn't just walk out there. He would see me instantly. I needed to see what he was doing without him seeing me. I remembered the manager's office. It was a small room next to the stockroom doors. Inside, there was a bank of monitors connected to the store's security cameras. The cameras had backup battery power. I crept along the wall, slipped into the manager's office, and locked the solid wooden door behind me. This was my only safe spot. But how long would it last? The manager's office was cramped, smelling of stale coffee and cheap cigars. I sat in the rolling chair and looked at the glowing security monitors. The cameras were switching to night vision mode, turning everything into a creepy, glowing green color. I found the camera for the main store area.
The man in the smiling mask had walked out of the stockroom. He was now in the main aisles. He was still carrying the red gas can, splashing fuel over the candy displays, the magazines, and the front counter. He was destroying the place. But why? People rob gas stations for cash, not to burn them down. As I watched the monitor, the man stopped in the center of the store. He looked around. He knew I was hiding somewhere. Then, he did something that made my blood freeze. He reached up with a gloved hand and pulled the plastic smiling mask off his face. He looked directly up at the camera in the corner of the ceiling. He knew exactly where the camera was. I stared at the screen, my jaw dropping. I knew this man. It was Marcus. Marcus was the guy who used to work the night shift before me. Rick, the manager, had fired Marcus 6 months ago because money kept going missing from the safe. Marcus had always been a quiet, angry guy. He knew the store inside and out. He knew about the cameras, the blind spots, and the locks. He held the mask in one hand, looking straight into the camera lens. His face was twisted in a look of pure rage. Then, he reached into his heavy jacket and pulled something out. He held it up to the camera so I could see it clearly. It was a light blue shirt, the store uniform shirt. It was covered in dark, heavy bloodstains. Attached to the pocket was a gold name tag. Rick. Marcus hadn't just come here to steal. He had killed the manager. Rick always came in at 4 a.m. to do the morning shift change. Marcus must have ambushed him outside or at his house.
He was burning the store down to destroy any evidence of his theft, and he was going to make it look like a tragic accident, an electrical fire that killed the new night shift kid. Me. On the screen, Marcus dropped the bloody shirt on the floor and poured gasoline over it. He picked up the heavy metal tire iron. He looked around the store again, his eyes locking onto the hallway that led to the manager's office. He knew where I was. He started walking toward the office door, fast. I panicked. I looked around the tiny office for anything I could use to defend myself. A stapler? A coffee mug? None of that would stop a man with a tire iron. My eyes landed on a large red fire extinguisher mounted on the wall near the desk. I grabbed it, pulling the heavy metal cylinder off the bracket. I ripped the metal safety pin out with my teeth. The extinguisher was heavy, making my arms ache, but I held it tight. I stood right next to the office door, pressing my back against the wall. On the other side of the wood, I heard heavy footsteps stop. "I know you're in there, David," Marcus's voice called out. It was muffled through the door, but it sounded calm, too calm. "Open the door. It will be much worse if I have to break it down." I didn't say a word. I just squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the handle of the fire extinguisher. Smash! The heavy tire iron crashed into the wooden door, splintering the wood near the handle. I jumped, my heart hammering in my throat. Smash! The door frame cracked. The lock began to give way. "I'm coming in, kid," Marcus growled. He was going to kill me. If I didn't fight back right now, I was going to die in this tiny room. I had to do the one thing he didn't expect. I had to go on the offensive. As Marcus swung the tire iron a third time, the wooden door shattered open. It swung inward, bouncing off the wall. Marcus stepped into the doorway, raising the iron bar above his head to strike. I didn't wait. I aimed the black hose of the fire extinguisher directly at his face and squeezed the trigger.
A massive, loud blast of thick white chemical foam shot out of the nozzle. It hit Marcus squarely in the face. It filled his eyes, his nose, and his mouth with suffocating, blinding powder. He screamed, dropping the tire iron and throwing his hands up to his face. The force of the spray pushed him backward into the hallway. I didn't stop squeezing the trigger. I rushed forward, pushing him out of the doorway while blinding him with the foam. The hallway filled with a thick white cloud. Marcus was choking, swinging his arms wildly in the air. When the extinguisher ran empty, I didn't drop it. I gripped the nozzle and swung the heavy metal cylinder as hard as I could. It connected with the side of Marcus's head with a sickening crack. Marcus groaned and fell sideways, crashing into a rack of sunglasses. I dropped the extinguisher and ran. I burst into the main store area. The smell of gasoline was overpowering. The floor was completely slick with it. Puddles of fuel covered the linoleum tiles. I slipped, falling hard on my hands and knees. The gas soaked into my jeans, burning my skin. I scrambled back to my feet, my shoes sliding on the wet floor. I looked at the front counter. My keys were sitting right where I left them, next to the cash register. From the hallway behind me, I heard a furious, animal-like roar. Marcus was getting up. I grabbed the keys off the counter. My hands were shaking so violently I dropped them. The keys hit the floor and slid under a candy display. "No, no, no!" I panicked, dropping to my knees. I reached under the shelf, my fingers desperately sweeping the floor. I felt the cold metal rain and yanked them out. I heard heavy footsteps stomping into the main store. Marcus was covered in white foam and blood from the hit to his head. He had picked up the tire iron again. His eyes were wide and insane.
He didn't run at me. He stopped. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver Zippo lighter. He flipped the lid open. The metallic click echoed loudly in the quiet store. He struck the flint. A small, bright orange flame flickered in the dark. "Goodbye, David," he spat, blood dripping from his nose. He tossed the burning lighter onto the gasoline-soaked floor. I didn't even try to unlock the door. There was no time. I threw myself at the small, bulletproof night window on the counter. I hit the latch, shoving the heavy glass panel open. The fire caught instantly. A massive whoosh of heat and sound sucked all the oxygen out of the room. A wall of blue and orange fire raced across the floor, heading straight for the front counter. I dove headfirst through the small night window. My shoulders scraped against the metal frame. I fell out of the building, crashing hard onto the concrete sidewalk outside. A split second later, the gasoline fumes ignited completely. The front windows of the gas station exploded outward. A massive shockwave of heat and shattered safety glass blew over my head. I covered my face and crawled away from the building, coughing violently. The heat was unbearable. The entire inside of the Gas and Go was a raging inferno. Flames licked up the brick walls and reached for the wooden roof. From inside the burning building, I heard a scream. It was a terrible, agonizing sound that I will never forget for the rest of my life. It was Marcus. He had been standing right in the middle of the fuel when he dropped the lighter. The fire had trapped him. The screaming lasted for maybe 10 seconds. Then it stopped. The only sound left was the roaring crackle of the massive fire. I staggered to my feet, my clothes smelling heavily of gas. I ran as fast as I could away from the building, towards the dark woods on the other side of the highway.
I didn't stop until I was hidden in a deep ditch surrounded by tall grass. I sat there, shaking uncontrollably, watching the place burn. It took 30 minutes for a passing long-haul trucker to see the massive flames and call 911. By the time the fire trucks and police cruisers arrived, the roof of the gas station had completely collapsed in on itself.
I stumbled out of the ditch, holding my hands up, crying as the police ran toward me. The next few hours were a blur of paramedics, flashing red lights, and police questions. They wrapped me in a shock blanket and put me in the back of an ambulance. I told the detectives everything. I told them about Marcus, the cut phone lines, the bloody shirt, and the fire. When the fire department finally put the flames out, they found what was left of Marcus's body near the front counter. A few hours later, when the sun started to rise, police dogs searched the dense pine woods behind the gas station. They found the manager, Rick's car hidden deep in the trees. Inside the trunk was Rick's body. Marcus had killed him, just like I thought. It was a clean-cut case. A disgruntled ex-employee returns for revenge, robs the place, kills the manager, and accidentally dies in his own arson attempt. That is what the official police report said. I quit that job the very next day. I moved back in with my parents, got a day job at a hardware store, and never drove down Highway 87 again. But there is one detail that the police could never explain, and it is the detail that keeps me awake at night, staring at my bedroom ceiling.
I told the detectives about the woman, the terrified woman in the torn dress who banged on the glass and told me that Marcus was already inside. The police searched the woods for 3 days. They used helicopters and tracking dogs. They found absolutely no trace of a woman. They found no footprints in the mud other than Marcus's. They found no torn fabric. They told me that the stress of the situation must have made me hallucinate her. But I know what I saw. I know she was real. I know she warned me. And I know the look on her face when she suddenly stopped crying and stared at the camera. It was like someone or something was controlling her. Marcus didn't act alone that night. Something else was out there in the dark woods. Something that used that woman as bait to keep my attention at the front door while Marcus sneaked in through the back. And the worst part is, whatever it was, it didn't burn in the fire. Sometimes when I look out my bedroom window at 3 in the morning, I swear I see a dark blue sedan parked across the street. It just sits there, with the engine off and the headlights dark. I never go out to check if someone is sitting in the driver's seat, because I know that out there, in the dark, you are never truly alone.